This happened just a few weeks ago. I was driving home after a long meeting in the rain. I remember hoping to clear my head as I drove down the winding roads leading to my apartment. It was dark, and the rain poured down hard. The streets were slick, and I could hardly see anything beyond my headlights. I've never stopped thinking about that drive, and I still feel uneasy every time it rains. I was focused on the road ahead when I noticed something off to the side. A figure stood by the roadside. At first, I thought maybe it was a hitchhiker. Something stopped me from pulling over. A chill ran down my spine. It felt like a warning. I glanced in the rearview mirror as I passed, but no one was there. My heart raced for no reason. I shook my head and tried to brush it off. Over the next few nights, I drove that same route. I didn't know why I felt compelled to do so. Then, it began to rain again, heavier than before. I gripped the steering wheel tighter. My mind kept replaying that figure standing by the road. I heard something that night. Faint chatter. It was hard to tell. I glanced around, but the echo seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. I turned up the radio. It sputtered, the noise turning to static. My hands felt clammy on the wheel. Maybe it was just my imagination. I tried not to read too much into it. On the third night, I saw something dart across the road. It moved fast, like a shadow skittering beside my car. My stomach dropped. I barely breathed. I had no idea what it was. I looked in the mirror again, but still, I saw nothing. I was alone, but it didn't feel that way. When I pulled into my apartment parking lot, unease washed over me. Something felt off. My hair raised on my arms as I stepped out. The night was too quiet. Suddenly, the radio switched channels again, landing on static, just as it had before. Cold crept into my bones. I walked briskly toward my door. My keys rattled in my hand. Then I heard it again, that faint chatter. My heart raced as I paused. It was so close, yet I couldn't tell where it was coming from. I turned around. Surely, someone was playing a prank or had followed me. I was about to call out when my phone buzzed. I looked down, and when I looked up, it was there. I stood frozen, confused. No one else was around. What was following me? The tension hung in the air like an unseen fog. Would it come for me next time? I turned back to my door, feeling frost creep into my bones. I breathed in deep and opened it. As I stepped in, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. That night, I lay in bed, terrified. I pulled the covers tight around me. I didn't want to think about what I saw. Yet, all I could see was the figure. I knew I'd see it again. I was sure of it. The next day, I couldn't shake the feeling of dread that clung to me. I tried to focus on work, but my mind kept drifting to that figure. It was becoming an obsession. I remembered the chatter from the night before, like whispers just out of reach. I needed answers, but I didn't know where to start. After work, I decided to visit the local library. It felt like a safe retreat from the chaos of my thoughts. I thought maybe I could find some information about strange occurrences in the area. The librarian, a woman with round glasses, noticed the shadows under my eyes. "You look like you've seen a ghost," she said lightly. I forced a smile in response and headed to the back of the library. I searched through old newspapers, hoping to find something relating to my experiences. As I flipped through pages, I stumbled across a headline that made my stomach drop: "Mysterious figure sighted on Route 47, numerous witness accounts." The date was just a few years back. My heart raced as I read the accounts. People spoke about dark figures appearing suddenly, often accompanied by strange noises. It was like déjà vu. What struck me the most was a statement from a woman who claimed the figure had followed her home. A chill shot down my spine. I hurriedly jotted down the details and decided to track her down. I had to know more. When I got home, I searched for her online and found a forum where she had posted about her experiences. She still lived in town, and I felt a sudden urgency to reach out to her. That night, I dialed her number. Each ring felt like an eternity. She finally answered, and I introduced myself, explaining my curiosity about her story. Her voice trembled as she spoke, recounting her encounter. "It's not just an illusion," she said. "Once it finds you, it won't stop." I felt the walls closing in around me. I asked her if it ever stopped for her. "It never stopped," she whispered. I moved away. "But some nights, I think I can hear it calling for me." The conversation left me shaken. I hung up and sat in silence, absorbing her words. I glanced at the clock, noting it was close to midnight. I couldn't ignore it any longer. I had to drive that route again. I needed to see if the figure would appear. A wave of fear washed over me, but a strange compulsion pushed me to confront my fears. I grabbed my keys, heart pounding, and headed for the door. I could hear my phone buzz behind me as I slipped outside into the night. I ignored it. I didn't want to look back. As I drove toward Route 47, rain began to fall. This time, the drops hit my windshield like tiny bullets. My hands trembled on the wheel. I was aware of every turn, every shadow lurking in the corners of my vision. I gripped the steering wheel tighter. That's when I saw it. The figure stood along the roadside, just like before. My breath caught in my throat. But something felt different this time. Something felt wrong. It seemed to shift, almost like it was staring right at me. It was no longer just a shadow, it felt alive. Then, a voice filled the car, clear as day. "Help me." I froze, flooded with a fear I had never known. I stared at the figure, my mind racing. "Help me." The voice echoed, a haunting plea that drove ice through my veins. I couldn't move. The weight of terror pinned me to my seat. Who or what was this? It stepped closer, breaking the trance. My instinct kicked in. I shifted the gear into reverse and slammed the accelerator. The car lurched backward, tires squealing over wet asphalt. My heart raced as I stole glances in the rearview mirror. The figure remained, standing eerily still, watching me leave. Relief flooded my senses when I finally turned onto a side road. I didn't dare look back again. Instead, I drove fast, the rain pouring harder, washing away the remnants of the encounter. I felt the need to find a place to breathe, a sanctuary from whatever this was. I ended up at the old diner on the outskirts of town. It was closed, but I parked and sat in the dim light of my car. I took a moment to collect my thoughts. What was happening? Was this real, or was I losing my mind? I wiped my brow, feeling clammy, overwhelmed by confusion. Then my phone buzzed again. I hesitated, glancing at the screen. A notification from the forum caught my eye. I opened it quickly, desperate for answers. The woman I had spoken to had posted again. "If you hear the voice," she wrote, "it means it's already attached to you. You must find the source." The dread settled deeper. I felt a pressing urgency to understand what she meant by the source. I remembered the information I'd read at the library about Route 47. I had to go back, but this time, I needed more than curiosity. I needed to confront whatever this nightmare was. With shaking hands, I typed a response to her. "What do you mean by source? How do I stop it?" I pressed send, my heart racing. While I waited, I glanced around the desolate parking lot. The oppressive silence was suffocating. A shiver ran down my spine as I thought about the figure, its words echoing in my mind. The headlights of passing cars cut through the darkness, but none brought the comfort I sought. Just then, my phone buzzed again. It was a reply, "Meet me where it all began." I hesitated, staring at the screen. "Where?" I typed back, but I didn't receive a response. I made a decision. I would return to Route 47 at first light. I needed to know more than what I had learned from the library or the forum. I needed answers that only direct confrontation could bring. But something in the pit of my stomach twisted at the thought. Then, as if summoned by my thoughts, the voice echoed in my mind once more. Help me. It felt closer this time, not just a memory, but a warning. I gripped the steering wheel tightly, determination fighting against the nagging fear. Just when I thought the night couldn't get worse, the headlights of a car washed over me, illuminating something in the shadows. I squinted out the window. A figure stood just outside the diner, its face obscured by darkness. I couldn't tell if it was real or a trick of my psyche. That cold sensation crept back, and my throat tightened. Was it watching me again? Or was it simply a figment born from my spiraling thoughts? As adrenaline surged, I knew I couldn't stay any longer. Fumbling to put the car in gear, I felt a rush and urgent, primal instinct to escape. I wanted to get away, but now something deeper tugged at me, pulling me nearer to the unknown. The sun barely broke the horizon when I returned to Route 47. My nerves were frayed, but curiosity held me together. I drove slowly, taking in the faded road signs and twisted trees, all drenched in morning mist. It didn't look menacing in the daylight, but a shiver crept down my spine nonetheless. The memory of the figure loomed like a dark cloud in my mind. As I reached a section of the road notorious for its turns, I noticed an odd sight: a cluster of discarded items at the roadside. I parked and stepped out. Rain sloshed around my ankles, and I felt the chill seep through my jacket. Upon closer inspection, I saw old toys, broken glass, and what looked like clothes. It struck me as disturbingly out of place. Why would anyone toss these here? Something caught my eye: a faded photo, half submerged in mud. I bent down to pick it up, wiping it clean with my sleeve. The image showed a group of smiling children surrounded by what seemed to be that very stretch of Route 47. An unsettling feeling rippled through me. Memories? Lost lives? I didn't want to think about it. I tucked the photo into my pocket, feeling an odd sense of urgency. My phone buzzed again, pulling me from my thoughts. I pulled it out to find a message from the woman in the forum, the source. It's near. I looked around, the heaviness of the air bearing down on me. My heart raced as I wondered what exactly that meant. Just then, a chill swept through the thick morning mist. It felt different this time: not just the cold, but something darker. The hairs on my arms stood on end. Suddenly, the voice returned, clearer now: help me. It rose in a haunting echo, filling the air around me. I turned quickly, scanning the tree line. Nothing stirred, but the oppressive silence was deafening. I stumbled back toward my car, my breath quickening. Fear clawed at me, but there was also an undeniable pull toward the voice. I had to confront it. As I reached the car, I caught movement in the corner of my eye. I whipped around, squinting through the fog. A figure stood among the trees, shrouded in mist. My heart pounded against my ribs. Who are you? I shouted, but the figure didn't respond. Instead, it began to advance slowly, every step deliberate. My instincts screamed at me to run. I fumbled with the car door, wrestling with the handle as I finally flung it open. I jumped inside, slamming it shut behind me. The figure stopped then, the mist swirling around it like a shroud. I turned the key in the ignition, my hands trembling. The engine roared to life, but panic pushed me back into the moment. Just as I put the car in reverse, the figure stepped into the light. I froze. The face was familiar, but distorted: a twisted reflection of something both haunting and benign. Recognition washed over me like the rain outside. It was a child from the photo, the same smile twisted into something that sent icy dread through my veins. Before I could process anything, it pointed toward the woods. The urgency in the gesture was unmistakable. There was something there. Something I needed to uncover. But could I trust it? My grip on the steering wheel tightened as I stared into the figure's wide eyes, brimming with a desperate plea. That's when the road shifted, and everything began to spin out of control. I slammed the car into drive, adrenaline kicking in as I hit the gas. The tires screeched against the wet pavement, sending water spraying behind me. My eyes flicked to the rearview mirror, half expecting to see the figure chasing after me. But nothing followed, only thick mist swirling in the shadows. I sped down Route 47, desperate to put distance between myself and the haunting vision. My heart raced with every turn, every drop of the road. The familiarity of the landscape felt wrong now, tainted by what I'd just seen. Memories of that photo flickered through my mind, the smiling faces becoming grotesque amid the storm. I needed to clear my head. I pulled onto a less traveled side road, hoping to find safety and collect my thoughts. It was eerily quiet, the only sound the drumming of rain on metal. I parked beneath a canopy of trees, their branches groaning under the weight of water. I closed my eyes, trying to calm my breath. Moments of silence passed, interrupted only by the soft patter of rain. Then came the voice again, lighter this time but no less insistent. "Help me." It grazed the edges of my mind, a whisper that ignited something deep within me. Against my better judgment, I got out of the car. The air felt charged, as if something was shifting in the atmosphere. I took a few steps toward the edge of the woods, rooted by a mix of fear and intrigue. "What do you want?" I called out. Silence. But then, just beyond the tree lean, a flicker of movement caught my eye. I squinted, straining to see what it was. It looked like a small figure darting among the trees. My heart sank. The voice grew louder, more rhythmic. "Help me." It wasn't just a plea, it felt like a command. Before I could change my mind, I stepped deeper into the forest, the underbrush crunching beneath my boots. My senses were heightened, and every sound felt amplified against the backdrop of rain. The chill in the air wrapped around me, urging caution, yet I pressed on. The voice guided me, drawing me further into the damp shadows. Then, I caught a glimpse of something on the ground, a small doll, its face marred with dirt, one eye missing. I knelt down, heart racing again. This wasn't just a doll, it looked remarkably like the ones from the photo. Collecting my thoughts, I stood, scanning the area for any sign of the figure. That's when a sudden snap of a branch echoed behind me. I turned, breath caught in my throat. Shadows danced among the trees, but I was alone, or so I thought. I turned to leave, wanting nothing more than to escape back to my car, when a soft sob pierced the air. It wasn't loud, but it felt like a knife twisting in my gut. The sound came from deeper in the woods. "Help me," the voice repeated, clearer now. The desperation hung in the air like the fog, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was meant to follow. But I hesitated, battling the urge to flee. What if this was a trap? My heart thundered in my chest, my mind racing through the possibilities. Just as I was about to turn back, I saw a shadow emerge from the thicket. The chill erased the sweat on my brow. I backed away slowly, but it was too late. I faced whatever was there head on, and the world around me blurred in panic. The figure stepped into view. It was small, too small for a grown adult, yet the sight of it filled me with dread. Clad in what looked like dirty clothes, its hair matted and stringy, it regarded me with eyes that seemed too old for its youthful face. I opened my mouth to say something, but nothing came out. The sobbing continued, quieter now, yet laden with sorrow that felt as heavy as the rain. "Help me," it whispered again, reaching a dirty hand toward me. My instinct was to run, screaming back to my car, but my feet felt glued to the ground. Something in that gaze held me there, paralyzed. I wanted to ask who or what it was, but the words died before they could escape. I stepped forward, cautiously, drawn by a compulsion I couldn't understand. It felt like stepping into quicksand. Every inch forward pulled me deeper into danger. The voice, both soothing and haunting, nudged at my core. "They're coming," it said suddenly, breaking the eerie calmness that surrounded us. "You have to help me before it's too late." "What do you mean?" The word slipped out before I could think better of it. "They want me back," it replied, glancing nervously over its shoulder. "You have to hurry." The urgency in its voice ignited my instincts. Maybe I could help. Maybe this was my chance to understand what was happening. I took another step closer, and it recoiled, as if I was the one who was frightening. "Please!" it cried, the tears mixing with the rain. "Okay. Okay, I'll help you." I didn't know why I said it. Maybe I thought I could save us both. "Just tell me what to do." "Find the others," it said, looking back toward the dense foliage. "They'll know what to do." "What others?" I asked, yet the question barely brushed the surface of my fear. Before I could press on, rustling came from the bushes behind the figure. A part of me wanted to turn and run, to get far away from whatever lurked in the shadows. But I couldn't let that doll-like face disappear into the dark without a fight. A second shadow moved forward, joining the first. This time, it was a little girl, no older than 6, with a tangled mane of hair and dirt-streaked cheeks. She was clutching a familiar toy doll, just like the one I had found earlier. My heart sank. The voice in my head was louder now, panicking. "Get out!" it screamed. I took a step back, wrestling with what was happening. The first figure, still rooted in place, tilted its head in a way that felt more animalistic than human. "You need to get away," it warned. Then I heard voices, distant, sinister, echoing through the trees like whispers from the grave. They were coming closer, and with every sound, terror gnawed at me. I was not safe here. That's when everything changed. A hand gripped my shoulder from behind, icy and unyielding. The fingers dug in, and I froze. I turned slowly, dread pooling in my gut, as more shadows lurked behind me. The light vanished, leaving me in darkness. I gasped, and suddenly, the cries of the figures faded into silence. I blinked, trying to adjust to the pitch blackness around me. My heart pounded in my chest, loud enough that I could barely hear anything else. I was alone. No figures, no children. Just shadows creeping along the edges of my mind. A cold chill swept through me as I felt the pressure of that hand retreat. I took a shaky breath and turned around, half expecting to see whatever was behind me. Instead, the space held only silence. I didn't know if I should feel relieved or terrified. The echoes of their sobs were replaced with the sound of the rain slapping against the leaves. "Find the others," the first figure's plea came back to me. In the darkness, I suddenly felt the weight of that request pressing down on my shoulders. I couldn't just turn and leave without knowing what was happening. I fumbled for my phone, its bright screen a beacon in this unnatural night. I turned on the flashlight, illuminating only a little of what lay ahead. The trees loomed like sentinels, their narrow trunks stretching upward into the void. I could still hear the distant whispers, soft and sinister, circling around me. "Please," I whispered to myself. "Just take a step forward." I needed to move. The figures could be back, or worse, whatever had grabbed my shoulder might still be lurking nearby. With a deep breath, I walked deeper into the woods. Each rustle of the branches sounded like footsteps. I kept my light trained ahead, but the beam only revealed more darkness. My mind flitted with thoughts of darting back to my car. But I thought of the children, of their pleading cries. Did they need me? Then I saw it, a flicker of movement just beyond the trees. I hurried toward it, my heart racing. As I approached, I realized it was a small clearing. If the figures were out there, surely they would be here. Maybe they were still waiting for me to help. "Hello." I called out, but my voice felt swallowed by the void. I peered into the clearing, the flashlight barely illuminating the ground. My stomach twisted at the shapes on the forest floor. To my horror, I found scattered toys, dolls, teddy bears, and other items, all worn and forgotten. It was like a graveyard for childhood. My pulse quickened. I knelt down, touching one of the dolls. It was identical to the one the little girl had been holding. A sickening realization washed over me. That was when I heard it again. The whispers, now clearer and more urgent. I stood, spinning around, the light catching on something moving just at the edge of the forest. It wasn't just shadows. 3 figures emerged, their faces twisted with expressions of longing and despair. They staggered forward, their movements jerky and unnatural. I stumbled back, fear coursing through my veins again. They were not children anymore. I took a step back, ready to flee, but my feet felt rooted to the ground. "Find the others," echoed in my mind, drowning out the panic. If I didn't act soon, I might become one of them, a lost soul among the toys. Suddenly, one of them reached out, its eyes deep pools of sorrow that seemed to swallow the light. "Help us," it rasped. And then, another crash from the woods sent me running. The darkness swallowed me whole, pulling me down a path of panic. I could sense something pursuing, and I had no idea where I was headed. Just one thought dominated my frantic mind: I had to find the others before it was too late. I sprinted through the trees, my flashlight beam cutting through the thick darkness, but it felt useless. The branches ripped at my clothes, scratching at my skin as I pushed forward. I could hear the whispers now, closer, like a chorus of lost voices urging me to stop. I didn't dare look back. My instinct screamed at me to keep moving, to find safety somewhere, anywhere. I thought of the clearing, of the twisted faces. Could they have been the others I was supposed to find? Panic twisted in my gut. I had no time to think. Then, in the distance, I saw lights flickering through the trees. Hope surged inside me. I darted towards it, the rhythm of my breath loud in my ears. The whispers faded just enough that I could focus. The light was growing brighter, pulsing like a heartbeat guiding me home. As I drew closer, I could make out the shapes of buildings through the foliage. My heart sank when I recognized the old park ranger station. I stumbled inside, the door creaking under my weight. The interior smelled musty and stale, but it felt a world apart from the outside. I flicked on the lights, feeling somewhat secure for the first time since entering the woods. There were dusty maps spread across a table, a filing cabinet crammed with yellowed papers, and old camping gear hanging from the walls. My heart still raced, but I was alone here, at least for now. I rushed to the windows, peering out into the thick forest. I could see shadows shifting, but nothing lingered close. For now, I was safe. I leaned against the wall, trying to catch my breath. That was when I noticed a small corkboard by the door, a few flyers pinned to it. I inched closer, the light barely illuminating the details. As I scanned the board, one poster caught my eye. It was a missing persons report, a photo of a young girl with a bright smile. Her name was Jessica. Below the photo was a description that sent chills through me. Missing for over 2 years. My heart sank further. Beneath Jessica's picture were others, more children. Each one detailed with names and dates, all vanished from the nearby town, all last seen in these very woods. I stumbled back, the weight of what I'd discovered settling heavily in my stomach. What happened to these children? And why were their faces now haunting me? That was when I heard it again. A soft rustle outside the building. My heart dropped as the whispers returned, now mingling with hushed voices that seemed to beckon me. Panic surged through me. Were they calling for me? I wasn't sure what to do. Then, a loud bang echoed against the back of the ranger station, shaking the walls. I felt my breath hitch. Someone or something was trying to get in. Without thinking, I rushed to the back door, debating if it was worth the risk to leave. I could still see the flickering lights from outside. Maybe I could reach them if I moved quickly. But as I reached for the door handle, my breath caught in my throat. The whispers rose to a crescendo, and then everything went unnaturally silent. I hesitated. That silence was more terrifying than anything I had faced so far. Then for the third time, I heard it, a small child's voice, pleading and clear, "Help us." I froze. I couldn't move. The words hung in the air, weaving into the fabric of the eerie silence. Help us. It was so clear, so desperate. My instincts screamed at me to run, but my body betrayed me. I was rooted to the spot, torn between fear and the overwhelming urge to answer. Then, as if the world was mocking my paralysis, the door rattled violently. The sound was a jolt of adrenaline, breaking my trance. I tore my gaze from the door and scanned the room. There had to be something I could use as a barricade. I hurried to the old filing cabinet, pushing against it with all my strength. It scraped across the floor, a loud protest that echoed unnervingly. I barely managed to wedge it against the door when I heard a soft giggle from outside. Chills coursed through me. A giggle? My heart raced again, my breath quickening. That sound didn't belong in these woods. I leaned in closer to the door, trying to listen. Help us, the voice said again, more insistent this time. Please. A flicker of recognition ignited in my mind. That girl, the one on the poster, Jessica. Was she really out there? The thought twisted my insides. I couldn't abandon her, could I? My heart fought against my fear, pushing me towards the door. But logic held me back. What if it wasn't her? What if it was a trap? As I wrestled with the decision, the banging intensified. Let us in. Another voice chimed in, a chorus of whispers swelling outside. It felt like more than just one child. My heart pounded, the fear threatening to consume me. I couldn't trust those voices. They could lead me straight into danger. I stumbled back, rattled. That's when I noticed the coat rack near the door. It was flimsy, but it might buy me a moment. I grabbed it and stretched it out to block the door, fingers trembling despite my determination. I didn't know how much longer I could keep this up. The banging continued, rhythmic and maddening. And then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw movement, a shadow flitting past the window. I spun around, squinting towards the glass, but there was nothing there, just darkness. I felt sweat bead on my forehead. Whatever was out there was playing a game, and it had me cornered. The voices were still calling, echoing through the station, urging me to join them. I couldn't ignore them any longer. I had to make a choice. Before I could think twice, I crept toward the front window, my breath shallow. I peeked outside, expecting the worst. What I saw sent a jolt through my system. A girl stood there, her back to me, hair cascading over her shoulders in tangled waves. She wore a tattered dress that floated around her legs. Jessica. I whispered, barely believing what I was seeing. But then she turned slowly, and I froze in horror. It wasn't her. The face staring back at me was blank, eyes dark and hollow, devoid of any warmth. Suddenly, the whispers grew louder, a cacophony calling my name now, not just pleading but demanding. Help us. Let us in. The room around me felt constricting, the shadows closing in. I stumbled back, a cold wave of dread enveloping me. I couldn't stay here any longer. There was only one thing I could do. As the voices crescendoed around me, I pushed open the back door, stepping into the night. The rain had subsided, leaving an otherworldly hush in its wake. But the air was thick with foreboding, and I felt it wrap around me like a cloak. I stood at the threshold, torn between the temptation to retreat into the familiarity of the ranger station and the desperate need to flee further into the unknown. The shadows from the trees danced in my periphery, tantalizingly close yet ominously distant. I took a deep breath, hesitating only a moment before stepping away from the safety of the light. Behind me, the whispers swelled into a dissonant choir. Help us, they implored, each hissing note wrapping tighter around my heart. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. I turned once more to glance back into the dim light of the cabin, where the shadows shifted. The urge to run surged within me. Gathering what remained of my courage, I sprinted past the trees, praying for the strength to push through the oppressive atmosphere. With every step, I heard the rustling of leaves, as if they too were whispering secrets. My mind raced, contemplating the horrors I'd witnessed, the children I seemed to have failed to save. I stumbled into the clearing where I had first seen those faces twisted by sorrow. The echoes called out to me, thrumming in my bones. It was then I realized something: those figures, that voice, it was a plea for help, but also a warning. They had warned me of the danger behind the door, of the darkness lurking just beyond reach. I had to find the source and do something before it was too late. As if guided by an unseen hand, I moved toward the edge of the clearing where the old toys lay scattered like forgotten memories. My flashlight beam flickered, illuminating the hollow eyes of a teddy bear, the broken glass of a lost childhood reflected in my own fears. "They want me back," the child had said, and I felt it then, the tug of something sinister anchoring me there. Suddenly, a gust of wind howled through the trees, sending shivers down my spine. A fleeting shadow darted past my periphery, and that chilling "help us" echoed from all directions. I turned, frantically scanning, and froze when I caught sight of a childlike figure standing just at the edge of the clearing. It was half illuminated by the moonlight, its back to me, a familiar silhouette. The figure began to turn, slowly, deliberately, and I resisted the urge to run once more, fearing that movement would seal my fate. It was no longer just a specter of a lost child, it was a reflection of my own haunting, an embodiment of fear, impatience, and the need to be freed. With each pulse of my heart, every breath consumed the silence where whispers and shadows entwined. "Help us." The mantra crashed against my senses, reverberating through the air, and suddenly, clarity broke through. "Okay," I breathed, "I will help you." Words tumbled from my lips, but I wasn't entirely sure what you encompassed. I locked eyes with the figure, and the connection in that moment felt raw and undeniable. I understood now: it wasn't just about confronting what had been lost. It was about shedding the fear that kept them trapped among the shadows. I stepped forward, my hands trembling but resolute. As I crossed the threshold of the clearing's edge, the air felt charged, filled with the weight of countless voices urging solidarity. Each breath I took felt like another brick removed from that wall separating us. "Show me," I whispered. "Show me what happened." The figure nodded softly, and in a flash, I was no longer in the clearing. Light blurred around me, I was surrounded by the echoes of laughter, of life lived vividly. I blinked against the sudden shift in reality, each flash of memory illuminating the air like fireflies on a damp summer night, children playing, laughter ringing, shattered glass neglected in the corner. And then, that moment struck. A flash of terror mingled with delight, I saw the children run towards something dark looming in the background. Yet just before the darkness could fully consume them, the memories faded, drawing me back into the stillness of the clearing. I gasped, breathless in its wake. They didn't just vanish. They were taken. My throat tightened as I confronted the horror of the truth. I stood there, caught between two worlds: the world that should have been and the one painted in muted tones of tragedy. The shadows around me seemed to dance more erratically, the voice growing louder still, a cacophony of the lost begging for resolution. Then an overwhelming sense of urgency washed over my spine. "You have to find them. You have to help us." The words surged forth, a rallying cry that deepened my resolve. Just then, crumbling voices filled the space: "The others. They're here, find them." The outlines of familiar figures began to reform in the clearing, shadows spilling from the trees: those who had been lost. I knew what I had to do. Gathering all the courage I had left, I stepped into the crowd, feeling the pull of the lost souls that tore at my resolve. I clung to the notion of what could be if I could just hold on to the light that flickered within me. But as I took a breath to speak, the darkness thickened, pressing closer. Was there really time left? As the figures circled, their whispers became a physical presence, tugging at my clothes, beckoning me to make a choice. So I looked into their eyes and whispered back, I want to leave you. I'm here to help. But even as those words left my lips, I felt the shadows creeping in, demanding, suffocating. And just like that, the world blurred again. I didn't know if I would make it out, I didn't know if I could save them all. But in the face of that darkness, I chose to fight. A thread of determination hung between us, and I thought perhaps that was the most important connection of all, tethered in suffering, but united in hope. In that fleeting moment, I knew I'd face whatever emerged from the shadows, whether it was born of the natural world or rooted in something more. A part of me resolved that I would no longer be the one left behind. I'd become more than just an echo, I would lead them to safety or die trying. I stepped deeper into the darkness, resolved to find the others, to face whatever sinister truth awaited me, knowing my fate now was irrevocably entwined with those who had whispered, those who had called out for help. Days later, they defined me on Route 47, dazed, shaken, holding only remnants of that haunting encounter, spinning tales of lost children and dark figures. But there would be no straightforward answers. The woods would still remain a mystery, an enigma interwoven with shadows that danced just out of reach. And me? I might return home, but the lingering questions would haunt me. What haunted those woods? Was it all just a figment of my imagination? Or were there ghosts buried deep in the earth, forever waiting for those who would dare to listen? I suppose it didn't matter. The truth that flickered ahead felt heavier now, a veil cloaked in uncertainty, waiting to tell its stories to anyone willing to hear.